Welcome back to the channel, you beautiful people. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. So happy that you could join me today on this beautiful, prosperous, and abundant Wednesday as we continue to become the best versions of ourselves and ultimately do it together and feel good about it. And you already know we're going to sprinkle a little bit of that in avalanches of prosperity and abundance coming your way, as what we're going to talk about today is going to make this whole idea of getting where you want to go super simple. So let's get into it. So what we're going to be talking about on today's video is we're going to simplify this whole process of creating everything that you want in life by understanding how our brain became programmed the way it is, how we can eliminate those programs and rewrite new ones. So when understanding how we became programmed, we really have to turn back the clock a little bit here. And we want to start with when we were children, because this is when this whole idea of programming the brain really started for us. So if you can remember back to childhood, you were around your parents. Maybe it was your mom or dad, or maybe it was your brother who raised you, or whoever that person may be. They started implanting these programs into you from a very young age. And these programs were stuff that you heard, stuff that you saw in your environment, and stuff that you assimilated with good as well as bad. And so the example I'll give you is, some of us grew up in families where the old adage was, money doesn't grow on trees. Who do you think I am, rich Uncle Moneybags? And money is the root of all evil. So as we were growing up, this was a phrase that was said to us over and over and over and over and over and over again. And the more times your brain hears something, the more it's going to believe that statement and embed that program into our minds. And so if it was an opinion about money that we heard on a consistent basis, whether it be money doesn't grow on trees, or who do you think I am, rich Uncle Moneybags, or money is the root of all evil, that idea and that opinion has been programmed into your mind, because when you were young, that's what you heard most often, and you took it at face value. And since you took it at face value, you became programmed by it. This opinion was something as simple as, we'll never be able to do that. I don't know why you keep asking me to go on vacation, because we don't have the means to do that. I can't get the time off. I'm working so hard, and man, there's just not enough hours in the day sometimes. So as we start to hear these things and see these things on a consistent over and over and over and over basis, especially from somebody who's been taking care of us, nurturing us, and ultimately guiding us in the right direction of our lives, we started to hear these opinions and these ideas, and we started to believe them as fact. And in doing so, we started to program our minds. Now, this is continued as we've grown older. So as you went into school and your parents told you, well, you need to get good grades so that you can get into a good college, so that you can have a great career, that was also an opinion or an idea that was programmed to you because your environment said that. Not only did your parents say that, your friends were saying it too. And America was telling you that this is what you need to do in order to become successful. So slowly over time, as we've been hearing these opinions about what other people think, or being plastered with things that are being put in front of us at all times, our mind or our brain starts to see these things on a consistent basis and starts to buy them as an absolute fact, which then in turn becomes a belief in your mind. And so this program or this opinion that somebody ultimately put in front of you became a cemented belief because you saw it over and over and over and over and over again. And something that you tell yourself on a consistent basis, eventually your brain is going to start believing. So it's said that if you tell yourself a lie over and over and over and over and over again, eventually your brain starts to believe it. And that's completely true, because what's happening is your brain is firing off these neural pathways, and brain cells that fire together wire together. So as you start to feed this idea of there's not enough money, or money doesn't grow on trees, or who do you think I am, rich Uncle Moneybags, you're essentially firing the same brain cells over and over and over again. And essentially what you're doing is creating a neural network that's stronger than any other neural networks, because this is something that you see on a consistent basis. Therefore, it's creating your reality and cementing that belief or that idea that was ultimately brought in front of you at a young age and has continued throughout the rest of your life. So you're always creating new programs in your mind, and these programs are brought on one of two ways. Number one, they're being brought on by repetition. So something that you're seeing on a consistent basis, people that you're hanging out with on a consistent basis, things that you're hearing on a consistent basis. So if it's you watching TV and you notice it's the same narrative over and over and over again, or you're listening to certain kinds of music and maybe that music's message isn't so positive, or you're around people who consistently gossip. Well, here's what happens is your brain is consistently flooded with that narrative. So eventually what's happening is you're creating neural pathways that are stronger so that they are consistently patterned to recognize those things. So it's going to basically see this gossip everywhere it goes. It's going to recognize the narratives that you're seeing on TV. It's going to recognize the programs that are in your music. And what you focus on, you get in your life. So if these narratives are negative or this gossiping is negative, you're going to start to notice that the people around you are also negative. The narratives that you're hearing on TV or in your music is also going to be negative, because what you've done is you've programmed your mind to focus on that thing based on that narrative that you've consistently repeated over and over and over again. And so it's important to understand that that's how these programs have been created throughout your entire life up until today. But the good news is there is a way to reprogram that narrative or those programs itself. How you do that is by taking the power out of the program. So the first thing is you want to recognize a program when it becomes active in your consciousness. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say that you're somebody who is trying to become a more positive person, but maybe your whole life has been a little bit negative. What you'll want to do is, it's going to be impossible to go from negative to positive overnight and only see positive on a consistent basis. So what you want to do is you want to recognize the program when it comes to the surface. So maybe you start to look at somebody and you start to get envious of that person, and you're like, well, look at what that person has. They must have been evil to get all of that money. Well, you'll start to recognize, and you'll go, whoa, hold on. That's a program that just came up in my brain. And I don't agree with that program because I know money's not the root of all evil. And what you do is you start to recognize this program itself. And so what you're doing by recognizing this program is it's giving you the ability to overwrite that old narrative that is no longer true about you. And then essentially what you're doing is, rather than new brain cells, again, brain cells that fire together, wire together, rather than these new brain cells going to that old neural pathway and that old circuit that feeds that old narrative, what you're doing is you're sending those new brain cells to create a new neural pathway for you. And you're essentially sending new cells to route that thought process in a different direction. So ideally, what you want to start recognizing on a more consistent basis is you want to start recognizing these programs when they come up and overwrite them as quickly as you possibly can. And when you first start doing this, it'll be a slower process where maybe you start to think in a certain direction and it starts to impact you from an emotional standpoint, and then you recognize how you're feeling 15 to 20 minutes later. But that's better than the old narrative of you never recognizing how you feel. So even though it took you 15 minutes, that's better than never recognizing it. And then eventually what's going to start to happen is you're going to start overwriting these programs as soon as a old narrative that doesn't fit anymore comes up. So if it is an old self-talk about you that maybe I'm just not that strong of a person, if that starts to come up, you go, well, cancel, that's not true. I'm an extremely strong person and I'm willing to prove it. And you start rewriting these old programs. And so the easiest way for you to write a new program is to understand what you're listening to on a consistent basis, what the narratives in front of you actually are, the people that are surrounding you, and what you're ultimately looking to create. Because as you start to analyze those things around you, you'll start to see why you do things the way that you do them. And now what you'll be able to do is rewrite those programs in order to create a more abundant, prosperous, and overall better standard of living for yourself, because you're now in control of the programs rather than the programs being in control of you. I hope that this video helped you understand how your brain works on a little bit more basic of a concept, because really that's all this is. Whatever you're primarily focused on every single day on a consistent day in, day out basis, that's what your brain is going to continue to foster as its truth and as its new reality. And so if you just take time to analyze those things around you, you'll start to realize those programs that are serving you and the ones that aren't. And when you start to recognize the ones that aren't, you can start to overwrite them and create the mindset that you want, ultimately creating the reality that you want in the long term as well. So I want to thank you guys for the continued support on this channel. It has been such a blessing. I'm so thankful to have each and every one of you. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, it's this beautiful, glorious button that you're seeing right here. And of course, give this video a thumbs up and share this with somebody who may need to hear it as well. Other than that, I want to wish you guys a fantastic rest of your week. Peace.